Thank you, darling. Wow, thank you so much for staying so late. I so appreciate that. Listen, have you felt the good energy for the last few days around here? Well, then pat yourself on the back because it's coming from every one of you. You people are just lighting up this place, and I appreciate that so much for you. Thank you for bringing all that love to this conference. Thank you. Today, I'd like to talk about a topic related to my books, which are the Biology of Belief and the Spontaneous Evolution book. And if I could have that first slide, here it is. There. These two books changed my entire life. And they changed my entire life because when I was in the medical school teaching, I was a person so caught up with genes and molecules and DNA and no concept of spirituality and all that. And then the cells showed me a world that I never thought was possible, a world that was so different from what I was teaching that I actually walked out of the medical school, stopped teaching because I realized we were teaching the wrong thing. And it was really kind of beautiful understanding about how our beliefs create our life. And that's really what the biology of belief is all about. And what was so interesting about that was that at the time, I was having a very wonderful, successful professional career, but I really had a very sucky, lousy personal life. And people would look at me and say, but Bruce, you wrote the biology of belief. How can you have a bad life? And I thought, oh, maybe I should read this book. And so when I started to look at the book, I started to realize that it's biology of belief. And what's really wonderful about it is it completely turned my life around. Before I really go any deeper, I really want to bring attention and thank, there's a wonderful crew of people in the back. Brian and his company, there's like NASA back there, and they've been keeping the lights on for several days. Okay. So here's this guy, totally unsuccessful in trying to create his life and writing this book. And what I was looking for was this. And guess what? This is the greatest part. There's a science behind this. There's a science that why you fell in love. Why do you seek love? How do you find love? And if you understand the science, it can change your entire life like it changed mine. I lived 50 years without any personal life that I would want to talk about, and I have to admit that my last 17 years with my beautiful partner, Margaret, has made a whole difference in the world because I have come to this amazing conclusion, and I hope I leave you with this conclusion. There's this understanding that we're born, we have this life, we die, and then there's this thing, we go to heaven. I have to tell you, if you understand this new science about relationships and all the understanding of how love and how you find it, then I think you'll see that there's a different story, and a different story that I am really buying into right now because I believe it to be totally true is a cosmic joke because it says this: you're born into heaven. We're born to be here, to be creative and experience lives and to write wonderful chapters for our own experiences to go back into our spiritual realm. And so really, rather than waiting for heaven, it's really right here. And so as a consequence, I ended up putting this book together up here about how's the science of this thing work. And really what's so interesting about it is I'll go back to this honeymoon experience and I'll say, what is the honeymoon effect? So let me just ask you a couple of questions here. And the questions are concerning this. I want you to go back to a time in your life where you fell in love. I mean, big time love, head over heels love. It didn't have to last very long. As a matter of fact, a week would be great. A month or year, that would be fabulous. And what's the whole point about it is go back to that time in your life and let me ask 3 questions. And here are the 3 questions. When you were deeply in love and you experienced that love, were you healthy? Yes or no? Most people were exuberantly healthy. Not just healthy, they were over the top. You know, people in love glow. They glow because there's health coming out of that system. Love feeds the system. Okay, next question. Did you have a lot of energy when you fell in love? Yeah, you know, you made love for days without stopping for food or sleep. Come on. Okay, but now the big one. Was life so beautiful? Now, let's go back to that time. Was life so beautiful when you fell in love that you couldn't wait for the next day to have more of that life experience, yes or no? Well, then look at it this way. You created heaven on earth. It was the most beautiful life experience. You just didn't even want to go to sleep. You wanted to be bathed in that love all the time. Well, here's the point that I'm going to talk about today. That was not an accident. That was not a coincidence. That was a personal creation. And it starts out so beautiful for almost everyone like that, but after a short time, it really turns into something totally and completely different. And the relevance about that is simply this. Why did something that was so beautiful go so bad? And the answer is this. Because we were involved with that as well. Another thing that was not an accident or coincidence. And why my excitement over this topic is if you understand how you created the love in the first place, and you understand why you lost that honeymoon juiciness. It doesn't mean you separated from each other. It just means at some point that experience of that joy of waking up in love like that just goes into regular life at some point, and you love each other, but it's that, what happened to that heaven on earth experience? Well, if you understand how you lost it, you understand how you created it, and you understand how you lost it, then think of this simple consequence. You can have this as a life experience every day of your life. It never has to change. And this is really, really important. And it's also, there's a biology behind it. There's a reason for it. Why did you get so much pleasure and joy? Because nature was encouraging you to do this. But to talk about this, I'm going to pick 3 topics out of the book. I'm going to talk about energy. I'm going to talk about some chemistry, and then I'm going to talk about consciousness. And if you understand the sequence here, then you understand this. It's the energy that brings you together. It's the chemistry that gives you that experience of heaven on earth. And it's the consciousness that usually gets in the way of the whole damn thing. So if you understand that, then we're going to kick off, and we're going to start off with something called the biological imperative. Why do you seek love? Why do you seek love even when it fails and it's not really working? You still don't stop. You get up and you try it again. You keep getting out there and looking. There's a drive, an innate drive. And this drive, as drives are related to something called the biological imperative. The biological imperative are these behaviors that are attributed to the drive to survive. Well, there's 2 parts to this. The drive to survive as an individual and the drive to survive as a species. Well, the drive to survive as an individual is the drive that says you're hungry, you're going to find food, you're thirsty, you're going to find water, you're going to find a safe place to sleep. These are drives for you to stay alive as an individual. But when you're looking at the drives for keeping a species alive, then there's some important aspect to that, and that is the addition of the concept of reproduction. You need to bring reproduction into the story. Well, reproduction in this particular case means you need to find somebody else. And this process means when you start bringing people together for the survival of the species, then nature encourages this, and I'm going to explain why and how. But let's go into the first part. Let's go into the energy. And when I talk about energy, let's look at a simple understanding about energy in your life, and it's just like this. The amount of energy you have is relative to the amount of life that you can express. If you have no energy, you lose all your energy, you're dead. You have excessive energy, you're able to create anything you want in your life. So there's a tendency for all things to move toward higher levels of energy. This is the underlying drive. The first thing, you will seek higher energy in your life because that is what's going to feed you and keep you alive, okay? So we have this understanding of energy, and I say, but what the heck is energy? And I say, well, energy is something you can't see. It's all around us like this, right here in the middle of this empty spaces, which is not empty. It's filled with all kinds of energy in here. I said, but you can't see it, but I can tell you what it looks like. I can tell you what it looks like because I can drop a rock into a pond. And when I drop that rock into the pond, the energy from the falling rock is handed over to the water, and the energy moves through the water. You don't see the energy, but the force of the energy causes the water to make waves. Well, the waves are the complementary shape of the energy. So the invisible energy force is the shape of a wave, the ripples in the pond. And so all of this is this energy. Well, what was really interesting is when you and I went to school, what we saw and learned about the material world were atoms. Yes, atoms, these were these physical things, little marbles, ball bearings in a little solar system kind of thing, the fundamental unit of the material world in which we live. In fact, the word atom in Greek means uncuttable. That was meant to be the smallest particle in the universe. Well, starting in 1895, they started to find there was stuff inside. And they started to look inside. Guess what they found? They found the nucleus, and there were protons and neutrons, and they found electrons running around the outside. And they said, oh, The atom is made out of smaller particles. Yeah, well, that was cool for a few years. But then what happened was they said, what are those smaller particles made out of? And that's when the world changed. The world changed because when they started to look inside the small particles, there were no other particles anymore. There were no particles at all. They said, but what are these particles made out of? And the answer is energy. Nothing tangible. It's a force. They're like little nano tornadoes inside those little particles called electrons, protons, and neutrons. Why is that relevant? I say, well, you can't see energy. And I say, well, what does that mean? He said, well, you're made out of atoms. And all of a sudden you say, but I can see you. So all of a sudden there's some illusion where material comes out of this. But let me show you what the atom actually looks like. This is the atom from the perspective of quantum mechanics, and here it is right here. There it is, right there. The significance is this. It is made out of energy. There's nothing there. And then I'm sure you're sitting there in the audience going, yeah, but Bruce, if you're just energy and it's invisible, how the hell can I see you up here on the stage? I say, because the lights are on. Turn off the lights, can't see me. And they say, well, what do you mean? I say, because what physicists will tell you is the light is bouncing off of you and reflected. So the energy that you are is reflecting light. You can't see me in the dark because I'm not physically there. I'm an energy. And you can only see me when the lights are on because the light is what is bouncing off the energy. And then you go, yeah, but look, even in the dark, if I come up on that stage and I all of a sudden put my hand out, I can feel that you're there. So there's something physical. I go, wait, let me give you another picture. Here's a picture of a tornado. Think about this question. If you get in your car and drive toward the base of that tornado, do you think, even if you go 100 miles an hour, do you think your car is going to drive through the tornado, yes or no? No, it'll be like hitting a stone wall. I mean, tornadoes pick up trucks and houses. That's how forceful it is to think that you could drive through it. It's impossible. But you say, well, that tornado's physical. I go, no. That's the dirt and the dust that got picked up in the tornado. I say, what does the tornado look like without the dirt and the dust? It looks like that. I say, well, yeah, cool. And I say, but guess what? Drive across that open field toward where the base of that tornado was, and when you get to it, you're going to hit the stone wall. And you're going to say, but there was nothing there. And I say, there was energy there, and it was in a force field. It repels you. You push on it, it pushes back on you. So the idea is up. So you come up, you find me in the dark, you put your hand on me and push and say, I feel you. And I say, it's like a tornado. You're feeling the energy vortex. All of this comes down to a very important, significant conclusion, and that is this. You are made out of energy. That means as an energy element, you are connected to all the energy everywhere. So our vision of an atom as this turns into, in quantum physics, a picture like that. And in fact, the real picture of the atom looks like that. Why? There's no nucleus into it. It's a tornado of energy spinning on the inside, sending out ripples of energy all over the place. Well, I said, well, this is really cool. And I said, but look at this article. Not the title of the article. What I want you to read is the first line in the subtitle. And the first line in the subtitle is, every atom or molecule emits and absorbs light of characteristic wavelengths. Every atom and molecule emits light and absorbs light. Quick question. Are you made out of atoms and molecules, yes or no? Well, then by definition, as you're sitting here, by definition of physics, you are emitting light right now and you're absorbing light. So you're entangling into that invisible field that's all the way around you. You were never disconnected from this field. And then I said, well, what happens is when I drop two rocks into the pond and the energies are coming toward each other, I say, what happens to that? I go back to the previous article, and what did it say? Atoms give off energy. Yep, that's the ripples coming towards you. But what else do they do? Absorb energy. So the ripples of one will interact with the ripples of the other and make a complex interaction, and it's called entanglement. And all of a sudden, why is that relevant? You are entangled with everyone in this room right now. You're entangled with the physical things in this room because all things are made out of atoms and molecules. They're all giving off energy and affecting you. This is the entire foundation of feng shui. Feng shui is put physical objects that radiate energy in different positions and different objects with different energies and tune your room so that it is in harmony with your energy. That's feng shui, simple as that. So the whole point about this entanglement is, well, what does that represent to us? So I'm going to show you this experiment. Here's the experiment. I drop two rocks exactly the same size from exactly the same height, and I drop them at exactly the same time. They both hit the water. And the ripples of one and the ripples of the other are starting to come toward each other. And I say, yeah, but what happens when the ripples meet? So I said, well, first I'll show you a schematic, but then you can see how you can determine the outcome. So let's watch. I'll drop the two rocks into the pond, and then I'll overlap them, okay? And then the question is this: what is the resulting wave? And the answer is simple. Add up the values of the waves. +1 + 1 is a wave of +2. -1 - 1 is a wave of -2. So I say, what does it really look like then when the two waves come together? And it looks like that. And all of a sudden you see the two energies entangle with each other, but they add up. The energy of the composite is greater than the energy of either of the two individual sets of waves. Well, the waves are interfering with each other, and in physics they call this constructive interference. What does that mean? When the interference occurs, the energy is greater. And you say, well, how do you know the energy is greater? And I go, look, you drop a little rock into the pond, you get a little tiny ripple. You drop a big rock in the pond, and you get a wave. The height of the ripple is proportional to the energy in the water. So the idea is this: the height of these waves says that the energy of the composite is greater than the energy of each individual. You say, well, okay, so that's really nice, Bruce. What the hell does it have to do with me? I'm sitting in the audience right here. And I go, because you know it in your own personal life. But you didn't know it as constructive interference. What do you know it as? You know it as good vibes. Good vibes. That means you've been someplace or you've been with some people and your energy got raised over what it was before. So it's like, hey, Friday night, you come home from work, you're dragging yourself, and you say, oh, I got to go to the party. I don't want to go to the party. I don't have any energy to go to the party. And you say, but you got to go. So you go to the party, you get to the party, and then soon, man, there you are dancing all over the place. I say, where the heck did you get all the energy from? And the answer is this: when you went to the party, there were other people whose energy waves were harmonic with you, resonant with you, and through constructive interference, you got energized by the energy of the other people. That's called good vibes, okay? But there's something else. There's another form of interaction. So let me show you the opposite interaction. It looks almost the same. It's like the two sets of ripples here, but here's what's different. This time I drop one rock before I drop the other rock. Why is that relevant? And the answer is this: this ripple is going up, this ripple is going down. When this one's going up, this is going down. They're out of phase with each other. They're not in the same phase. I say, well, what happens? I say, same thing as before, add them up. So we bring the two together, you see they're out of phase, and I go, well, add them up. +1 - 1, 0. -1 + 1, 0. I say, what is the consequence of these waves interfering? And look what happens. Boom, flat, no energy at all. It's interference, not constructive interference. It's called destructive interference. You could lose your energy from an energy that's out of phase with you. And what do you call it? You already know now. It's called bad vibes. And it's interesting because good vibes and bad vibes are really the primary drive force of all living organisms on this planet for a very simple reason. Remember, life is due to the amount of energy. Constructive interference versus destructive interference, good vibes, bad vibes. Good vibes enhance your life, bad vibes take away from your life. So the most primitive organisms on this planet communicate with their environment by reading the vibration. So nature doesn't have to send a clam to school to say, you should go do this and don't go do that. You don't have to tell the clam what to do. Why? Because the clam in its world will read the vibrations. If it moves in the right direction, what it's going to do is have good vibes and go, oh yeah, I'm getting more energy than I had before. And then I say, yeah, but if it goes the wrong way and it goes into a predator's area, it's going to lose its energy. Bad vibes. So all the clam has to do is just read the energy. Is it good or bad? Why? Good means go, bad means go the other way. And so the whole idea about it, you don't have to educate primitive organisms as to what's right and what's wrong. They can read the vibes. Well, it's not just primitive organisms that do this. All of us do this. Every organism on this planet, from bacteria to humans, reads environmental vibrations as the primary means of communication. Except when we get to humans, we're programmed not to go by the feelings because the vibes are turned into feelings, the good vibes, the bad vibes. And that becomes important because if you stop listening to the feelings, then you're not reading the environment appropriately. So, for example, a gazelle doesn't have to run up to a lion and go, "Hey, are you my friend?" No, hell, the gazelle stays over here and goes, "Ooh, bad vibes, I can't be here." And it goes this way. So what's the point? It reads the energy. Your life is dependent upon reading the energy, and everything gives off energy, including people. So basically, if you don't pay attention to the vibration, you start listening to what people say. Biggest mistake you could ever do. I remember I love watching movies, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was looking for a movie to keep me going, and there was this British movie on, and British movies, they're intelligent, but no guns and robots and stuff like that. And so I was there at 3 o'clock thinking, I can't watch this. So I go up to turn the station, but just as I turn it, a line of dialogue comes out that stopped me in my tracks. And this is what the dialogue was. It said, language was designed to hide feelings. Think about that. In other words, is somebody your friend or somebody not your friend? Your vibration will tell you instantly. But if you listen to the words, hey, silver-tongued devils can tell you any damn thing they want. And therefore, when you don't go by the vibes, you're getting the wrong messages across. So there really is a return for us to go back and say, your feelings are profoundly important because your feelings are connected to the vibration, and the vibration is your energy level. And if you're in the right place, you're going to get better energy from it. And if you're in the wrong place, you're going to lose energy. If you're with the right person, you gain energy in that relationship. And if you're with the wrong person, you can feel a loss of energy in your life. So don't listen to the words. It's really going by the vibrational feelings, okay? Well, here's an interesting aspect about it. Remember, all atoms and molecules are spinning and giving off energy. So the crystal atoms in this crystal goblet are spinning, and they're all giving off energy. And here's a tuning fork that is harmonic and in phase with it. And I said, well, what would happen if I hit the tuning fork? And the answer is, when I hit the tuning fork, the goblet does what? So I say, ask you what does it do, but then I say, wait, look at this. What is this? They're both spinning at the same vibration with the same ups, the same downs. And I said, well, what happens when two energies come together that are in harmony with each other? What's the result? More power. I say, why is that important? Because the shape of a goblet is because the atoms are holding on to each other to a certain degree. But if you cause them to spin too fast, constructive interference, too much power, and what happens is, at that case, the vibration is too powerful and the goblet explodes. It's called harmonic resonance. And the point about that is that what is in tune with the vibration will move with that vibration in constructive interference. And I said, well, this is pretty neat, but then look at an experiment. Simple experiment. Constructive interference. Here we got 5 goblets with different frequencies, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Tuning fork X. This is a very important little observation. I hit the tuning fork. What's going to happen to the 5 goblets on my screen? You ready for the answer? No? Okay, I'll give you the answer. Here it is. When I hit the tuning fork, only the goblet in resonance will move. And that becomes important because what it says is this: only things that are in resonance with your vibration will become activated in your presence. And that becomes totally important. But then you say, well, what do you mean my vibration? I go, here's an interesting story. This is an old picture of a new technology called magnetoencephalograph. And you've heard of electroencephalograph, right? You put wires on a person's head, you read their brain activity. And I go, cool. And I say, this is a new thing called magneto, not electroencephalograph. What's most critical about it is, look, the probe is not touching the head. Why is that relevant? You can read a person's brain activity not by touching their skin, but put a probe out here. Why is that relevant? Stop for a second. Your thoughts are not contained in your head. Your thoughts are broadcast to the environment. So in simple truth, your brain is like a tuning fork. It will take whatever vibrations of whatever you're thinking and broadcast them to the field. You say, yeah, but what does that mean? I go, well, let's go back to our experiment. Here's a brain with vibration. Here are 4 goblets. In goblet 1, there's a couple arguing and fighting with each other. In goblet 2, there's a woman looking perplexed, thinking, why do I always end up with these jerks? Goblet 3, a romantic dinner over candlelight. Goblet 4, he said, she said, courtroom battle. No, he did it, she did it, he did it. And I say, well, which one of these goblets is going to move? Which one of these ones will move in your life? Why is that important? And the answer to that question is, what are you thinking? What are your beliefs? What are your issues that you're mulling over in your head? If you think life is full of conflict, then you're going to end up activating this goblet, and none of these will be touched. But on the other hand, if you see life as heaven on earth and bliss and beauty, if that's what you're broadcasting from your head, you won't activate this one, you'll activate that one. Why? The goblet that moves is a goblet that's in resonance with a thought. So your thoughts precede your reality. You send out a thought, and the goblets are all different goblets out there in the field. Which goblet's going to respond to you? And I say, what are you thinking? Because whatever your thoughts are, that's the goblet that's going to move. Okay, so then all of a sudden thought comes into this as a big deal. Now, let's hold this aside because we're going to come back to this thought business in a little bit. But this is about the energy part. You're an energy being, you respond to energy in the field, and you interact with anything in the field, be it objects like lamps and tables and pictures on the wall, or people. You interact with them via a vibrational communication, and you know when a thing is good because the vibrations give you a higher vibe, constructive interference. And think about this. So I'll give you a simple example. You go to the store, let's say you go to Nordstrom's over here. There are 10 pair of shoes on sale. Every shoe from the same designer, every shoe the same price, but every shoe a different model. And you're going to go in there and buy one pair of shoes. You go in, you got 10 pair of shoes to look at. You end up picking one pair of shoes, and you say, this is the one I want, and you check out. My question is this. Tell me the exact reason why that one out of the 10 pair was the one you chose. And you can give me all kinds of reasons. I'm just going to tell you what the answer is. It made you feel good. It was the one that gave you the feeling. And why is that important? You were reading the vibes of this shoe in your life, and it turned out to be constructive interference, and said, that's the one that makes me feel good. You didn't pick anything by accident. You go into a neighbor's house, and they got pictures on the wall that make you go, oh my God, how can they do that? And then you realize this. You have pictures on the wall that what? Match your energy. They have pictures on the wall that match their energy. But if you go over there and see that picture and it makes you go, ah, then it says what? These people are not in the same energy as you. And so again, the objects, the things, the people you bring into your life are the consequence of the energy that you're broadcasting from your mind, okay? Now let's talk about chemistry for a second. About 47 years ago, I was growing stem cells in tissue culture. Stem cells are embryonic cells. And all of you have stem cells because every one of you I see is still alive in this room, so that's a good sign. And the reason why you have stem cells or embryonic cells in your body is simple. Every day, as Carl Sagan would say, you lose hundreds of billions of cells. And that's because they die from aging and trauma and just a normal attrition. Why is that important? Well, if every day you're losing hundreds of billions of cells, how many days in a row can you go without replacing hundreds of billions of cells? The answer is not very long. So if you're still here, then by definition, you have stem cells that are manifesting the replacement cells every day of your life. So they're embryonic cells. I say I take one stem cell and put it in a culture dish all by itself, just one cell. It divides every 10 or 12 hours, one cell, then 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and after a week I've got 50,000 cells in the Petri dish. But here's the most important part of the story. All the cells are genetically identical because they came from the same parent cell. So I got 50,000 siblings with the same genes. Every cell genetically identical. But this is the experiment. Cells are like fish. They live in a fluid environment, an aquarium. That's why if you cut yourself open, the fluid leaks out, because cells live in fluid. And the fluid that we put the cells in here is called culture media. And here's what I do. I take some of the cells from this original dish, move it to another Petri dish, and change the environment, change the composition of the culture medium, the environment in which they live. And in that dish, the cells form muscle. I go back to the same dish, pull out some more genetically identical cells, put it in a different dish, B, with a different environment, and the cells form bone. Or I go to the same dish, pull out a bunch of cells, put it in a third Petri dish, C, with still a different environment, and the cells form fat cells. The whole question that you come down to, which is the most profound question in the world, is what controls the fate of the cells? Genetics? That's a question. Genetics? No, because they're all genetically the same. So it wasn't the genes that pushed them one way or the other. It was the response to the environment. So all of a sudden it says, wait, genes don't control biology. It's the environment that influences which genes are activated. Well, this was really such a cool experiment, and a result from all that. Did all that disappear on me? Okay, there. This was such a cool experiment that at some point I realized I couldn't teach in the medical school anymore, because what I was teaching was genes control life, and my experiments revealed every day, repeated every day, the same thing. The fate of a cell was controlled by the environment, not the genes. Well, this makes a profound difference. The profound difference is simply this. If genes control your life, as you've been taught, then that makes you a victim of heredity, for a simple reason. As far as we know, you didn't pick the genes you came with, and if you don't like the traits you have, you can't go out and change the genes. So all of a sudden, your traits are controlled by genes that you were handed without you having any control over it. Then you see yourself as a victim of life. Yeah, oh man, there's cardiovascular disease running in my family, there's cancer running in my family, there's Alzheimer's running in my family, and all of these beliefs make you feel I'm going to be a victim of these things because it's in my lineage. And it turns out this is absolutely untrue. It's not the genes that control that. That's why there's no such thing as a real cancer gene. I say, what is a real cancer gene? That gene, if you ever possessed it, would automatically kill you before you were born because you'd already have cancer before you were born. But I say, wait, there are genes that cause all these cancers. I say, do they cause the cancer? Most important question. And the answer is no. And how can I say that? And the answer is because only a certain percent of the people that have the genes get the cancer. And so let's say 60% of the people that have this gene end up with breast cancer, BRCA1. I say, well, that's really cool, but what about the 40% of the people that have the same gene, but they don't have the cancer? We never studied that. Well, that's what you really want to study. It wasn't the genes that gave you the cancer, because people can have the genes and never have the cancer. And it turns out it's the environment that pushes that button and creates that cancer, okay? Well, this is a new science called epigenetics. And the difference between what sounds the same as genetics is genetic control literally means control by genes. That would make you a victim. The genes made me do it. But this is called epigenetic, and the little epi prefix is very critical because the epi prefix, epi means above. When I say the Latin word for skin, it's called epidermis. I said, what is epidermis? Well, there's a layer underneath the skin called dermis. The layer above the dermis, epidermis, is skin. So I said, what is epigenetics? And I go, genetic control, controlled by genes. Epigenetic control means control above the genes. And this is the revolution in science, because what we find now, it's the environment and our perception of the environment that controls our genes. And I say, why is that relevant? Because if genes control who you are, you're the victim of genes. But if the environment controls who you are, your perception controls who you are, then you have the absolute right to be the master. For a simple reason, you can change your environment and you can change your perceptions. And if you do that, you change your genetic readout. You're not a victim, you're a master of your biology, but you've been programmed to let go of your control and by the belief that you're a victim. Well, epigenetics takes us into the understanding of cells in a petri dish. And let me save you a lot of issues about health right here. If I take this dish of cells and move it from a good environment to a bad environment, what do you think is going to happen to the cells? I move them from a good environment to a bad environment. What do you think is going to happen? They'll get sick and they'll die. And you say, oh, Bruce, your cells are sick. Get a doctor. Take a look at this. And the cell doctor would show up in my house, look in the petri dish and go, yeah, Bruce, your cells are sick. All right, I think we should give them some medicine. And I go, no medicine. You want health? All you have to do is take the dish from the bad environment, put it back in the good environment, and instantaneously the cells will get well and be healthy again. Here's a simple point. The environment controls the genetics, so the genetic expression, by definition, is a complement to the environment. If you are sick, it's a complement to the environment that you're in. Rather than trying to fix yourself by putting all the chemistry and changing it with drugs and all that, no, deal with your perception and your response to the environment. You don't need the drugs. Indeed, there is a genetic influence, but let me just set your mind at ease. Less than 5% of illness is in any way connected to genes. 95% of illness is lifestyle, perception, and the way you respond to the world. If you change that, then you get control over your life. That's like what spontaneous remission is all about. A person's dying with cancer, and all of a sudden it goes away, and you say, well, what was the common underlying factor of spontaneous remission? The answer was simple. It was people who said, oh, I'm going to die. Well, then I'm letting go of this stuff, man. I'm going to take whatever time I have left. I'm going to take my money. I'm going on vacation, and I don't care about the stress, the job, the people, anything around me. I'm going out to enjoy my life. And guess what? They go out, and they start living way past that supposed deadline. Why? Because they changed their perception of a life that was stressful, which is where most disease, 90% of disease is now attributed to stress, that if you let go of the stress, that's like taking the petri dish from the bad environment, put it back in the good environment. Guess what? Instantaneous healing, spontaneous remission. It's basically your cells are reflecting that environment. And then you say, but Bruce, you know, you're still talking about cells in a plastic petri dish. I'm a human being. Where's the connection? I don't see that. And I go, here's the connection. When you look in the mirror and see yourself, and you see a single individual looking back, so I look in the mirror, and there's that guy that looks like Bruce looking back at me, and I go, yeah, single human being. I go, he's a single human being, but he's not a single organism. A human being is comprised of about 50 trillion amoebas. The living structure in your body are the cells. You, by fullest definition, are a community of cells. Why is that relevant? And the answer is simply this. While you perceive yourself as a single entity, you are indeed, listen to this, a skin-covered petri dish. And inside that petri dish, you have growth medium. And I say, well, what is the growth medium? Because why? The growth medium controls the fate of the cells. I say, so what is in my skin-covered petri dish that's the growth medium? And the answer is that stuff that's helping us is called blood. Blood is the growth medium. Why is that relevant? And here's the answer. It's the composition of the growth medium that determines the genetic expression of the cells. So the composition of the blood becomes important because the composition of the blood is going to determine the fate of your biology. It's as simple as that. So I go, well, what in the blood is important? Number one, nutrition. But this itself is a topic I can't go into today, but a lot of other people have talked about it. Seeking the right nutrition is the most important part of making sure your culture medium is fulfilling the needs of the cells. But more importantly, in this case, are cellular signals. Cells respond to signals. In the blood, we have signals. We call them emotional chemicals. We have hormones, growth factors, and regulators of all kinds. Those are signals that are in the blood that influence the fate of the cells. I said, well, how do cells respond to signals? So I said, look, I take cells in a petri dish, split the cultures into two sets. In one set, I put nutrients in front of the cells. In the other set, I put toxins in front of the cells. I put them back in the incubator. I come back after a period of time, and I say, where are the cells going to be in each of these two dishes, which is quite obvious. The answer is this. When there are nutrients in the cell, in the dish, the cells move to the nutrients because that's a positive energy-enhancing vibration. So cells move toward nutrients. In contrast, when there are toxins in the dish, the cells move away from that because that's bad vibes. And so basically it says this, cells move to where the energy is. And if there's good vibes over here, that's where they're going to go. But so do people. We do the same thing. We're made out of cells, so we're going to do exactly the same thing that cells say. So the ability of a cell to read the environment and make the right decision is called an adaptive reaction. And that adaptive reaction is really what's responsible for life. You adapt by following the energy and avoiding the loss of energy. Okay? I said, well, how does this work? And I go, look, cells respond to stimuli in the environment. And there's cell behavior. Cells move toward positive stimuli. They're attracted to it, good vibes, growth. And cells move away from negative stimuli. They're repulsed by it because it's threatening their energy, and they go into protection. There's actually a third response, which is a no response. And it simply works like this. I call it elevator music. It's sort of you get in the elevator and the music's playing, and you're not going to dance, and you're not going to die. It's just background. So here's a simple point. Cells only have 3 responses to stimuli in the environment. Cells either move to a stimulus, cells move away from a stimulus, or cells totally ignore the stimulus, and it's based on the energy of influence of that stimulus. So cells are reading the vibes, and that really becomes important because motion, cells move based on responding to those stimuli, okay? So motion becomes a consequence of reading stimuli and reading the energy. So on a simple level of this, survival of the species, I said, is reproduction. Well, that's really cool. How does it work? I say, well, females release estrogen, males release testosterone. I go, okay, cool. I say, what does that mean? I say, when the testosterone is picked up by the female, the receptors say good vibes, and when the estrogen is picked up by the male, good vibes. The two come together, they're drawn together, and they create the next generation. And to illustrate that, I want to, just give you an advisory on the following slide. If there are children in the room, before you, okay, cover your children's eyes. Here it is. Look at that. And the consequence of this is what? The frogs get together and mate because of simple estrogen and testosterone concentrations as stimuli in the field that attract them together. And the significance about that is they mate, but guess what? After the mating, they don't sit back and talk over a glass of wine by the fireside. They're on their own. And I go, well, that's interesting, but let me show you this. Sometimes this happens. It's a little impersonal at this point. And I say, why? And here's the reason. Because this behavior is driven totally on the basis of reflex behavior. I'm responding to the stimulus that the female's releasing, the female's responding to the stimulus that the male's releasing. The stimuli bring them together and they mate, and that's all they do. You say, but why isn't there any more to this? And the answer, and this is the critical part of why you are different than these particular frogs. And here's what it is. When a frog egg is fertilized, does it need parents? Yes or no? No. A frog egg will develop on its own. The tadpole hatches out and goes out without any nurturing from anybody. It's on its own. And so parents are not needed at a lower level of organization. But as you get to higher complex organisms, they're not born totally ready to be independent. They need a period of development. Well, if they need a period of development, then they need nurturers to stay there to help them develop until they become independent. And therefore, nature wants to encourage individuals to come together and stay together rather than just come and have this reproductive act and leave, because humans require at least 13 years before they're on their feet and on their own and ready to leave the house and take care of themselves. So basically, nature wants you to be together for 13 years. Well, how does nature get you to do that? And the answer is this: pleasure. Nature encourages with pleasure, good vibes, and it creates that experience that you fall in love with. And the intention is to keep that going. Why? Well, look at human behavior. Remember, we said the cells are like digital. They move one way, they move the other way, they don't move at all. But human behavior is slightly different. There's a scale. And we always will move to the positive stimulus. We will always move away from the negative stimulus, but how fast and how much moving you're doing is really not the same. It's based on a scale. The highest attractive force in human biology is love. Love supersedes nutrition. If you don't have love and you have all the nutrition, you don't have a life in the end. It's the love that is the primary stimulus that encourages people to be together. Fear is the opposite. That will cause you to run the other way. And what causes this gradient of response? And the answer is the brain releases something called neuropeptides, chemicals. The neuropeptides provide for motion. But in the case of humans, it's not just motion. We have another name for it. It's called emotion. Emotion is the result of your chemistry telling you which way to move. move this way or that way and how fast you should move. A positive stimulus could be, oh, I like that, which means, oh, okay, I like that. I'll move toward it a little bit. Or it could be, I adore that person, and then all of a sudden you find yourself running over there. It's a range, a gradient of emotions, okay? So I say, well, how does it work? And here's the understanding how it works. The chemistry that drives your behavior. And it goes like this. The environment has the signals, internal and external environment. What reads the signals? The nervous system reads the signals. It's called perception. I perceive the lights are on in the room. I perceive the temperature. I perceive these people. That's what the nervous system is reading. But that doesn't determine your behavior yet. What determines your behavior is the next phase. It's called the mind. The mind does interpretation of the perception. And so if I would give you a simple understanding, I'd say, look, I love spicy Mexican food. I mean, so hot that perspiration drips out of the remaining follicles of my head right here. And my neighbor, I invite my neighbor over and say, we're having some Mexican food, and he's all excited to come over for dinner, and I take a bite and go, oh, wow, this is really great. He takes a bite and goes, yay, how can you eat this stuff? And what's the point? Both of us have the exact same neural perception, the same stimuli, but we have different interpretations. So it's not the perception itself, it's the interpretation that ultimately determines which way you're going to move. I say, well, the interpretations then does what? It reads the signal, gives it a value, and then tells the brain to release neuropeptides. The neuropeptides go into the blood, the culture medium. Some of them go down the nervous system, and they get to the cells. These signals from the brain control the behavior and the genetic activity of the cells. And that's how your mind controls your biology. But it also says this, what about your movement? I say, the chemicals that come out are also the chemicals of emotions. So the organizing chemistry of your body is read as the sensory perception of emotions. And it says whether you're going to move this way or you're going to move that way, okay? So emotions are like colors, if I want to make that analogy. So I say, oh, here's some fundamental colors, and I say, let's attribute some emotions to them. Red, gradient of love and fear. Orange, a gradient of happiness and sadness, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, well, here's the problem. The colors are not that simple. The emotions are not that simple. What does the chemistry look like when you put it in the body? I said, well, rather than that kind of chemistry, it looks like that. It's a whole range, a gradient. There's many different levels of red, from light red to dark red, light green to dark green, all these colors. I say, how can you get this great combination, this great complexity? And the answer is this. Well, in the paints, if you want a particular color, you pick a paint chip. On the back of the paint chip is a little code. And you go back in the paint store, and there's a paint mixer with tints. And the tints, you add drops, so many drops of this tint and that tint to the white paint, and all of a sudden you can get each of the individual colors on the card. I say, yeah, but what about in your emotional chemistry? And I go, well, it's not really a paint mixer in this case, it's the brain. And the brain releases not tints, but the brain releases different neuropeptides. So your experiences are converted into these different neuropeptides, which cause you to move towards something or away from something, and you mix them all together, and you get these very complex behaviors because you are responding to the chemistry coming from your brain. So now to make sense out of it and put it all together, look at it this way. Your brain is the chemist that adds the chemistry to the blood, which is the culture medium. The composition of the culture medium is used to direct the genetics and the behavior of the cells. And I say, well, why is that important? And I go like this. I ask you for a moment to close your eyes and think of someone you love. And then when I say, well, what happens when you think of someone you love? And I go, look what happens when you as a self-biologist are creating your own biology and you're thinking of love. Here's what happens. You start to release from your brain chemistry, dopamine, oxytocin, vasopressin, growth hormone. These chemicals released by the brain in love, if I add them to a plastic petri dish, the cells grow exuberantly well. If you add them to a skin-covered petri dish, the people glow with exuberant health. Love produces exuberant health because the chemistry of the blood from that perception and interpretation is the chemistry of growth and enhancement. I say, wait, same exact person closes her eyes, but when they open it, they see something that scares them. I go, oh, scaring you? Different chemistry comes out from the brain. These things don't come out from the brain. In fear, you release these things, stress hormones and inflammatory agents, and it goes into the blood. And if I take the chemistry of fear and put that into a plastic petri dish, guess what it does? the cells stop growing. That's why that statement you've heard your life, fear kills, is a biological reality. If you stay in fear, the chemistry from the brain will shut down the growth of the system, saving energy for fight or flight. And so basically, what does this mean? Your behavior is based on the chemistry coming from your brain, which is based on your perceptions. And all of a sudden you start to say, okay, so I'm looking for a mate. I say, yeah, first thing is this. You're sending out a broadcast, so you're going to cause whatever goblet that is resonant with you, that individual will come forward in your life, the other ones will not. If it's not a very positive vibration, you're going to bring in an individual without positive characteristics to it. It's going to always resonate with what you're broadcasting, okay? So the perceptions become very critical. And so when I say, well, what happens when you're fully in love, that honeymoon experience, what is the chemistry that happens? And here it is. Dopamine. It's responsible for pleasure, motivation, and sadness. When you fall in love, the dopamine levels go up to the roof. And the dopamine is giving you the pleasure of love. It's giving you that motivation to go out there and, yeah, let's have more love. Man, this is really great. And sadness goes down. Sadness is the opposite effect. When you run low on dopamine, that's when you have sadness. When you run high on dopamine, no sadness. So there's no sadness in the honeymoon. It's pleasure and motivation. I said, what else is released? Oh, vasopressin. Vasopressin increases your sexuality, it increases your attractiveness, and it affects your anxiety. I say, well, when you fall in love, the vasopressin also rises up to the top. You become much more sexually active. You become much more attractive to the other individual, and they become more attractive to you. So you meet this person, you feel these vibes, and all of a sudden, guess what? You're totally attracted to them. You're feeling the pleasure. This is really cool, and no anxiety. I say, well, okay, what else happens when you fall in love? Oxytocin. What's it related to? Trust, attachment, and fear. I say, well, what happens when you fall in love? Oxytocin levels go up. Why is that important? Because it enhances your trust, it enhances your attachment. It says, this person who gives me those joy juices of dopamine and vasopressin is the one I want to be connected with. Oxytocin is bonding. It says, this is the one that gives me the pleasure. And this becomes very critical because oxytocin is also used when a mother is nursing her baby. When she's nursing her baby, the lactation produces oxytocin in her body. The nursing child releases oxytocin when it's taking in the milk, and the two of them bond together. Oxytocin is bonding. So you really need that as the glue to hold the relationship together, okay? And there's one more chemical, and this was a good and bad news chemical. It's serotonin. Serotonin is related to obsession, aggression, and addiction. I say, well, what do you think happens when you fall in love? And the answer is this. Serotonin levels go up to the top. Obsession, aggression, and addiction are the characteristics of love. It is totally an obsessive experience. When you fall in love, all you think about is the other person. No matter what your job is, every few minutes your mind goes back to the other person. You become obsessed with them. Not bad. It's better than the obsession of washing your hands every 3 minutes. Falling in love is much better. It's also associated with aggression. Yeah, see if somebody tries to weasel their way between you and your lover and see who gets aggressive in that particular situation, okay? And it's most importantly, it is addiction. The serotonin released during love is the same kind of serotonin and the same amount that's released during when a person's an addict, let's say a heroin addict. A heroin addict is an addict because the serotonin is keeping them doing it over and over and over again. So it's an addiction. Love is an addiction. That's why the problems happen when you fall out of love. When you fall out of love, the addiction, the Jones, you're Jones, and I need some love, I need love. And the whole idea is about why. It's a chemical addiction to the serotonin. It's very interesting. Notice that little aggression thing? Let me give you, if anybody has cats or ever petted a cat, you pet the cat and it really loves it and it just, releases and purrs and everything's really great. And so what's it getting? Pleasure. It's getting some dopamine out of that. The serotonin part is like, yeah, keep the pleasure going. And then you stop petting the cat. What do you think the cat does? The claws come out, grab your hand, yank you back down, and says, come on. Why? When it loses the pleasure, it becomes aggressive as well. People that fall out of love sometimes become very aggressive. become stalkers, etc. Why? The whole addiction phenomena. It's the serotonin part. So the serotonin part holds you together. So I said, why would nature do all this? And the answer was totally simple. Nature wants you to be together as a couple at minimum of 13 years just for one child. How does nature say, yeah, why would you even think about being a couple with somebody for 13 years? And the answer is, going to have a lot of pleasure, man. It's going to feel good. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to make you feel heaven on earth. That is the reward of coming together and staying in love. Love will feed that, and all of these things will keep you in that addiction mode. So nature says, yeah, you become addicted to this, you'll stay together as parents long enough to raise the kids. So we're talking about the chemistry, and why is this important? Well, there are 7 chakras. The bottom 3 chakras are the chemical dependent chakras, which are rated to the body's chemistry. So your body response is down here, and it's based on your physiology, the chemistry. Okay, but now I want to talk about the top chakras, and that brings in the mind. And the mind is so critical because the mind makes or breaks the chemical vibrational reaction. If you understand this, this is where you're going to find how you created the honeymoon, and you're going to also see why you lose the honeymoon from understanding this. And the first thing I have to tell you about the mind is a very short definition of its function, and yet it's short, but I want to tell you this. I don't care how, it's convenient, it's short, but it's the most profound statement I can tell you for a very simple reason. The function of your mind is to take your beliefs and turn them into reality. So whatever you believe, the job of the nervous system is to put you in a situation so that belief manifests as your basic reality. This is really important because this is why you can live in the world and realize like every day it's pretty much constant. For you, it's pretty constant. Why? You're sending out the same belief and you're manifesting the same world all the time. And that's really convenient, except it depends on what your beliefs are. And I'll give you a simple example of that. If I hypnotize you, and then I tell you I'm going to touch you with a burning cigarette, and I take my finger and touch your hand or arm with my finger, in a minute or so, you're going to have a blister. And it's like, well, I didn't burn you. And it's like, no, it wasn't, you didn't get burned. You had a perception of being burned. And the perception was then used by the nervous system to manifest a blister. You create a blister for no reason at all other than your perception. Well, that's basic. All your perceptions are involved. What do you think about yourself and your life, etc.? Where do you get your perceptions from? This is critical. You have to understand the nature of your perceptions to find out, are you going to find yourself in a relationship or are you going to find yourself out on the street? Which one of these is going to be in? I say, what are your perceptions? So I say, well, our perceptions were programmed into us. And I give the story of the elephant in India. And here's the basic story of the elephant in India. How do you tame an elephant that's 12 feet tall? You say, oh, just tie it up to the house. It'll pull your house down. So how do you keep it from going away? You don't want your elephant to wander. So here's what they do. They get the elephant when it's a baby. It's only a couple of feet tall. They tie that baby's leg with a big rope to a stake. And for 2 months, they leave that baby tied to the stake. Every day the baby gets up, and what does it do? Every day it tries to get away from the stake. It yanks, it kicks, it rolls on its back. It does everything to get away. Guess what? After 2 months, it doesn't continue doing this because after 2 months, it's finally got it. It says, oh, when the rope's on my leg, I can't move. Well, why is that relevant? Well, for the 2-foot elephant, that's interesting, but now this elephant is 12 feet tall. And I say, well, how do you keep it tied up? And I say, you tie a rope to its leg. And what do you tie it to? And I said, nothing. Just put the rope on its leg. It already has a memory of an experience that says when a rope is on my leg, I don't even try anymore. I already did that. I won't have to do it. I just will stand there. So this monster stands there with a rope not even attached to anything. Interesting story, but more profound for this reason. All of us have been that baby elephant. All of us grew up and had ropes tied to our legs. All of us grew up with beliefs of disempowerment, limitation, self-sabotage. These are the beliefs that keep us from expressing our full selves. They are the ropes that hold you back. And you say, well, wait, I don't understand how you get this. And I go, here's the story. It works like this. There are 2 minds, and this is the confusing part for most people, because there are 2 minds that work together, but they're independent. One is called the conscious mind, which is associated with what is called the prefrontal cortex, a lobe of tissue, the latest evolution of the brain right behind your forehead right here. Well, that's about 10% of the brain. The remaining 90% of the brain, by definition, constitutes what's a subconscious. Well, here's what's really important. This is critical. They're not connected in the sense that if the conscious learns something, the subconscious automatically accommodates it. Totally false. It will never happen that way. The conscious mind learns in a different way and has different functions than the subconscious mind. And if you understand that, then you can start to see, why doesn't your life work out the way you want it to work out? Why don't your beliefs, wishes, and desires manifest? And I can show you that right here. Because first of all, let's talk about what the two minds are. The conscious mind is the seat of your personal identity, your source, your spirit is hanging out here in this lobe of tissue right behind your forehead. That's where the spirit sits. It's sort of like a desk where the spirit sits behind the desk, looks out these big windows called the eyes, and is driving the vehicle. Where do you want to go? And what's interesting about the conscious mind is that it's creative. The conscious mind is creative. This is profoundly important. This creativity is what separates humans from lower organisms. Not only do we respond to things in the field, but we can be creative with the things in the field and make all new behaviors. So the conscious mind is creative. I ask you a very important question right now. What do you want from your life? The answer will be a creative answer because it's going to project what you want that we don't have right now. And so I say, what do you want? And the answer comes from your creative mind. So what does the creative mind represent? It represents the source of your wishes, your desires, and your aspirations. What do you want? I want to be healthy. I want to have a great job, and I really want to be in love with somebody. Oh, those are wishes and desires that you carry, and they're in the conscious mind. Cool, that's really great. What else is in there? Well, there's something called positive thought and positive thinking. It gets a bad rap, but I'm going to tell you why. Because why aren't your wishes and desires always fulfilled? Why is it so hard to get to those goals that you have great wishes and desires for? And the answer turns out because it's the action of the other mind that throws the monkey wrench in. The subconscious mind. Oh, what's the subconscious mind? There's nobody in there. It's a record playback device, like an old-fashioned tape recorder. There's nobody in there. And what does it do? It records behaviors and makes programs out of it. So the subconscious mind is habitual. What you learn how to do, you don't have to relearn it all the time. Well, a lot of people attribute the subconscious mind as the font of all evil. It's like, no, it's not. It's the most helpful thing you have. Why? You learned how to walk once. If you don't have a subconscious mind, then every day you would get up and the first thing you try to do is learn how to walk again. You spend every day of your life just trying to stand up and walk. Oh no, you've got a subconscious mind. Once you did it, once it learned, you don't have to do it again. It's got a memory how to walk. Everything you do in your life, from your job, driving a car, talking to people, your relationships, if it's been repeated, then the subconscious mind has a program how to do that. Okay? So it's a habitual mind. What's in it? Programs derived from instincts and your life experiences. Learning how to walk, how to drive the car, how to do the job you do at work. Once you're trained to do the job, you don't have to think about it. It's automatic at this point, okay? And here's the troublemaker right here. It's also got acquired programs that come from other people. Well, that's the monkey wrench that blows the whole thing out of the water. It's not just your wishes and desires that are in there. Other people's programs are in there. You go, whose programs are in there? Well, let's talk about it this way. We have these two minds. They're two different functions. One's creative. The other's habitual, okay? And they're not equal. And one of the reasons why is the subconscious mind is a programmed mind. It's got programs in it, okay? So where do the programs come from? There's a story about a chimp, a baby chimp who's on the chest of his mother right there. So the little baby chimp's face is facing you and the mother's head is right here. And this is a story about these two chimps, and they're in Japan. The mother was taught by scientists a program that took over 3 years to teach the mother. And what the program was is you activate a computer, and then when you activate a computer, a Japanese kanji script comes up that represents a color. Underneath the script is a color bar. If the chimp selects the right color to match the script, a coin comes out of the computer, and then the chimp can take the coin, and there's a vending machine over here where the chimp can pick out a reward, nuts, apples, bananas, whatever it wants, and it can put the coin in. So they're training the mother 3+ years. She has this little baby. It's not even really 3 months old, and it's not even really walking that good. So what do? The mother does the program, gets the coin on this particular day, goes over to the vending machine, but this day she leaves the baby. The baby's in front of the computer. What does it do? Pulls itself up to the computer, turns on the computer, this kanji script comes up, the baby selects the right color, the coin comes out, the baby grabs the coin, and the scientists are meanwhile like, oh, who taught the baby how to do that? It's only 3 months old. It learned the whole program. The answer is profound, because what they came to the conclusion was simply this. It suggests that infants pick up such skills solely by observation and don't have to be actively coached by their parents. Let me tell you this. There is no difference in the behavior of chimpanzee babies and human behavior. It's all exactly the same. Babies pick up behavior by strictly observing without any coaching or work with parents. All they have to do is watch. And I say, well, how does that happen? Well, here's an interesting story. If I put wires on your head, I could read your brain activity. It's called the electroencephalograph. And I can tell you this, as an adult, you have a whole range of activities, low vibration, high vibration. During the day, you're all over the place. But children don't have that. When children start, they don't have a whole range of vibration. So for the first year or so of a child's life, it's primarily in delta. Delta is unconscious or sleeping. Yeah, first year of a child's life, predominantly sleeping. But here's the interesting part. From 2 until 7, the predominant brain activity is called theta. Theta is imagination. Yeah, kids between 2 and 7 mix the real world and the imaginary world because they're operating in theta frequency, which is imagination. So when you tell the kid, that's not a horse, it's a broom, the kid will look at you like, what are you, crazy? It's a horse. I'm riding a horse. And the whole idea is about it because they can mix the imaginary and real world together, and that is a characteristic of children before 7 years of age. By around 7, the energy amps up, the vibrations go up to a higher level called alpha, which is calm consciousness. So that's calm consciousness, which acts through about 12 as the predominant activity. And after 12, we ramp up to the next higher level called beta. Beta is schoolroom focused consciousness. Okay? This is why education changes from before 12 to after 12, because after 12, children are possessing a higher level vibration to deal with much more conscious activity. But something is important in this image right here, which I will now emphasize, and that is this. A child is not in consciousness until age 7. A child is operating lower than consciousness for the first 7 years of its life. And the significance about that is it's in theta. And I say, yeah, theta is imagination. And I got to tell you this, theta is hypnosis. And why is that important? How many rules does it take a child to learn to become a functional member of a family and a community? How many rules? If you had to sit down a child in school at a desk and say, these are the rules to become a functional member of this community and this society, it would be thousands of rules. Well, you can't teach a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or 1-year-old. You can't teach them. I said, well, how do they learn? I go, they're in theta. All they do is observe. They observe the mother. If you're a girl, you preferentially look at the mother's behavior and record everything, how she responds to everything in her world. You're recording her behavior. If you're a boy, you generally focus on your father, and you watch every one of his behaviors and you record them. Why? Hypnosis, unconsciously, not even going through a conscious filter. Why? Consciousness isn't even working. You download directly what you observe. Okay? And I say, well, this is really interesting. This is really how we become enculturated. How can you learn the 10,000 facts necessary to be a member of society? The answer is hypnosis, not even your involvement with consciousness at all. But then here comes the part that throws the monkey wrench in all of our lives, at least 90% of us anyway. Not only do we learn enculturation in that first 7 years, we also learn who are we? How do I know who I am? The only way you know who you are is by other people telling you who you are. So you have parents, and these parents are going to give you self-identity. You're the most loving, wonderful, beautiful child that ever came on this planet. You have the potential to become anything. There's nothing that will stop you. You are a genius. Which one of you had that parent? The issue is this. Parents try to help their children by being like coaches of a team. When a coach sees a player not performing well, the coach needles the player to encourage them to do better. The coach will say, not good enough. You don't deserve this. Well, who do you think you are? You're not that good at this. And I say, why is this relevant? If the player is beyond 7 years of age, they're operating in consciousness and they understand what the coach is trying to say. But if the player is under 7, they're not in consciousness. Where are they in? Record. Who am I? Not deserving, not worth it, who am I? These are the things that we download that take away our power because they're just recordings from other people. The parents weren't intending to do that. They were thinking you will respond and perform better, but the child is not in consciousness to understand what the parent's trying to say. The child's just recording, not good enough, not deserving, not loving. And all of a sudden this becomes your identity in your subconscious. And I say, why is that important? I can tell you right now why that's important. I've been involved with workshops and belief change. And when we start these workshops, one of the first questions we test for on an individual's belief, when we do a muscle test, which is reading subconscious programs, we ask people to take a test and say, I love myself. 80 to 90% minimum will not pass the test. And the reason they don't pass the test? Because the identity period they grew up in took away the power of who they were, made them less than whole, not complete, that they were just trying to live up to some standard that the parents were talking about, but they weren't living up to it, which by definition means I'm not there, I'm down here. And this becomes critical because if your subconscious programs are saying you're not lovable, we're going to find out, well, how can anybody love you if your program is I'm not lovable? Because if someone claims to love you, you have to look at them and go, well, man, you have no quality control. I don't love me. How the hell can you love me? And this will sabotage you. So I said, well, okay, how does all this work together? Well, here's the issue. This is the problem, not just with the honeymoon, with virtually everything in your life. This is the problem. The secret mind, how your unconscious really shapes your decisions. Look at this. It says, according to cognitive neuroscientists, we are conscious of only about 5% of our cognitive activity. You go, okay, well, that's really nice. What does that mean? And I'm going to tell you what it means. The conscious mind is the creative mind with wishes and desires. According to conventional awareness of science, you only use that mind less than 5% of the time. In 95% of the time or more, you operate from the subconscious, which is the default. And you say, okay, why? How? What? What's going on? Here's the story. The conscious mind is not time-bound. I ask you right now, I say, what are you doing next Wednesday? And your consciousness disconnects from the current moment, goes up into the head where there's a Rolodex, and flips through and says, next Wednesday I'm doing this. I say, what did you do last Monday? Your conscious mind lets go of the current moment, goes up in your head and reviews what you did and says, this is what I did. Or I said, think about this. Your conscious mind lets go of the current moment, goes up into the thinking space. What's the issue here is this. When you are thinking with your conscious mind, by definition, it's not paying attention. That's when the default is the subconscious comes in to carry out the programs. So if you're walking down the street and you have a thought, you don't go, okay, thought's finished. Okay, next thought. No. You don't stop. What the issue is simply this. When your conscious mind goes on a hiatus into thinking and creativity, the default kicks in instantaneously, but it knows how to walk, it knows how to talk, it knows how to do your job, it knows who your friends are, it knows all these things. It will carry out the program. So the important part about this is simply this. The conscious mind has your wishes, desires, and aspirations, and it operates 5% of the time. The subconscious has the habits, but here comes the part. The fundamental habits in your subconscious mind are not yours. They came from observing other people, your teachers, your family, your community. So when you default into that subconscious, you're not playing your behavior, you're playing the behavior you downloaded from other people who generally do not express your wishes and desires. And all of a sudden you start living somebody else's behavior and you go, come on, I would know if I were doing that. So then I'll give you this story because most of you are familiar with it. You have a friend, a close friend. You know your friend's behavior very, very well. You've been with him a long time or her. And you happen to know their parent. And one day you realize your friend has some of the same behavior as their parent. So you get excited, you volunteer, you go, hey, you know, Bill, you're just like your dad. Back away from Bill. Bill is the first guy that'll say, how can you compare me to my dad? Almost all of you are familiar with this. This is the most profound story I can tell you. Profound. Why? Everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. I say, why doesn't Bill see it? First question is, why is he playing his dad's behavior? The answer is because he's thinking. Oh, so when he's playing his dad's behavior, he doesn't see it. Right. And so when you tell him he plays like his dad, he's in total denial of how can you say that? That's not me. And all of a sudden, you start to see where the disconnects come from. The disconnects come from the fact that you're not living your life. You're living a life 95% of the time that you've been programmed to live by other people. So you're not creating your life with this wonderful conscious mind, wishes, desires, and aspiration. 5%. That's a piece of you created. This is where your life comes from. Habit. Yeah, but the habits aren't yours. They came from other people. Okay? I go, wow. That's why you can't seem to get to where you want to go. And you don't see it. And this is the problem that's the biggest monkey wrench in life. You don't see that your own wishes and desires are thwarted not by outside forces, but by internal programming. And it's invisible, and you don't see it. And therefore, what would that mean to an individual who has great wishes and desires and doesn't manifest them? What do they think? It's not in my fate to have this. The universe is conspiring against me. I want to have this, I don't get it. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that outside is responsible. And the fact is, no! It was your own invisible subconscious behavior that's been shooting you in the foot, and you always wonder, who the hell is shooting me in the foot? And all of a sudden you start to realize your subconscious is controlling the program. So then I say, wow, what would happen if the subconscious didn't run the program? I say, oh, remember that movie? I say, where do you find this movie? I said, when you go in the store, it's in the science fiction department. I go, wrong. It's not science fiction, it's a documentary. You've been programmed. Yes, you have absolutely been programmed. Not with your wishes and desires. But here comes the issue that becomes very critical about this whole understanding. In the movie, they talk about take the blue pill and go back into the program and everything will be just the way it was. Or take the red pill and get out of the program. And I go, they never really said what happens when you get out of the program. I'm going to tell you what happens when you get out of the program, because this is the most important piece of this presentation right now, because it goes like this. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Can you understand the meaning of that title? And the answer is this. If your conscious mind is wandering, then the mind that's operating is the default mind with all the programs that do not support you. Of course, when your mind's wandering, you're not doing the happy stuff. They were looking at mind wandering and comparing it in different people and what's going on in their lives. So they find out, they say, mind wandering occurred in so many percent in so many samples, taken here and there, during every activity except making love. What does it mean? It means when you're making love, you have everything you ever wished and desired right in front of your face. Why would you let your mind wander? And it doesn't. And if you're making love and you're operating from the conscious mind, it's not this story anymore. That's everyday life. What's the honeymoon? The honeymoon is this. 90% or more coming from this, 10% or less coming from that. Why? You're creating not from your habitual mind, you're creating from your creative mind. wishes, desires, and aspirations. You're creating what you wanted. And when two people are doing that at the same time, guess what they're creating? Manifesting wishes, desires, and aspirations, called heaven on earth. And that's what the honeymoon is all about. The one time in your life you let go of the program, and all of a sudden, what are you doing? You're living wishes, desires, and aspirations. Well, this is great. This is what it's all about. This is the whole story. And the significance about that is then, well, then how come it doesn't last? Oh, I forgot to say this. At some point, even if you're in love like that, you still have to deal with life again. You got to pay the rent, you got to fix the car, you got to do your chores, and your mind starts thinking. And the moment your mind starts thinking, what behaviors are now going to come out of you? The subconscious habitual behaviors. Did they play in your relationship up to this moment, yes or no? No. You were creating with your conscious wishes and desires. And all of a sudden, these behaviors that show up and they're ugly from your mother, your father, your community, and they start to get in your relationship. And so somebody like my beautiful partner, Margaret, comes up and asks me a loving question, and I'm thinking about fixing the car, and she asks me this loving question, and I turn around and go, blah, blah, blah. And she looks at me with the universal statement and says, who are you? I've never seen this behavior before. It's not even pleasant. And then, where am I? This is the part. I'm Bill. I just did a behavior. Did I see it? Yes or no? No. So she says to me, who are you? And I'm thinking, what's she talking about? I've always been this guy. Well, actually, that's true. But I didn't see what I did, just like Bill. I didn't see it. But she saw it. She accuses me now of not being me. Well, that accusation means defense. I start to put a wall up. Why? I'm protecting myself because I'm accused of not being myself. Did I see it? Absolutely not. And all of a sudden, Margaret has a choice. Well, that behavior isn't so great. Matter of fact, if I had played that behavior on the first date, we may have not had a second date. But we didn't play that behavior up to now. We've been honeymooning the whole thing, heaven on earth, and all of a sudden this lousy behavior shows up. She has a choice. Her choice is, do I want to put up with that or not? And then she looks back and she says, yeah, this honeymoon thing is really great. That's pretty lousy behavior, but hey, this honeymoon stuff far outweighs that. I will compromise. I will accept that behavior as the way he is. It's not great. But the problem is this, the moment you compromise what? Heaven. You started not living in heaven as much. You took away a piece. That's my first behavior. Then another one shows up. And then she has to say, compromise again. And there's a point where if too many of these behaviors come up, she said, too much, too many compromises. I can't do this anymore. This relationship is finished. Then two people are standing there completely, what the hell happened? We had heaven on earth, and it devolved into this. And the fact was, why? Because subconscious programs came in and were inadvertently, not with our intention, sabotaging the entire relationship. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, what are you going to do with something like that? And the fact is this, well, you can compromise, but as I said, compromise takes away heaven. It doesn't mean you don't love the person, but it's not the same thing you had when you had the honeymoon. So I said, well, what can you do about that? Well, most people end up fighting and ending the situation at some point, 50%, but we don't have to go there. Because if both partners know what I'm talking about, if both partners know that you have subconscious behaviors that are not yours, not your intention, you don't even see them when you play them, rather than, who are you, what kind of behavior is that, you can have a different relationship. You can go, perhaps you didn't realize you were just playing your mother. And if I'm open enough and aware enough, I go, yikes, that scares me too. And then what we can do is say, let's stop the behavior and put in another set of terms that we would prefer rather than that behavior. So we stop a behavior and we put in another set of terms. I replace it. So it's like, oh, this can happen is my action. And I said, no, turn it around. This can happen. I can get these things. And I turn it around, and then I let it go. And then you go, well, is that it? And I go, no, because it's a habit. And when I do it again, she'll say, oh, you're playing that behavior again. I go, oh, okay, turn around. Here's what I'd rather say. Let's play that. Well, what am I doing? I'm creating another habit that overrides the first habit. And here's the consequence. What would be the consequence of this effort? It's blow away. The consequence is simply this. If you stop every one of the behaviors that institutes a compromise and rewrite it with a habit, then guess what? There'll be a point where your subconscious has the same programs as your conscious. And if that happens, then guess what? You go in a default, but you never even missed a step. You'd be doing the exact same behavior you were doing when you were conscious and in love. The significance is profound because when you rewrite the subconscious programming, you end up with the ability to create heaven on earth every day of your life for as long as you're here. That was God given to us. That was for us to be together, to make love, to have kids, and raise a generation of more superior children than the ones that came before. That was why we were getting into this whole thing in the first place. That was your life until somebody reprogrammed it for you. And so there's a chance to take this back and come back to another life. You can do this. I mean, I did it, you know? I did it. And what does this mean? It says, first we talked about the chemistry and the vibrations down here affecting these. Then I say, now we're talking about the consciousness, which is really the top 3 chakras. And so our psychology and our physiology, when they become in harmony together, where do you think they meet? At the heart. And when you start living your life from your heart instead of your head, you'll find heaven on earth. Because the heart always reads the right vibration. The heart will always tell you whether you're in the wrong place or the right place. Your consciousness can be screwed up by programming that gives you misinformation. You could read a good vibe and interpret it as a bad vibe in consciousness. But the heart doesn't deal with consciousness. Heart just looks at the vibration and says, am I getting more energy or less energy out of this thing? And the whole idea of follow your heart, because your head can have so many mistakes of programming in it, it will sabotage you your whole life. Now comes the problem of, okay, rewriting those subconscious beliefs. Well, how do you rewrite them? And here's the most important understanding. Not with the conscious mind. The conscious mind is creative. The conscious mind is what educated you when you read all these wonderful books from Hayhouse that said, oh, this is how you have this wonderful life. This is, oh my God, you educate the conscious mind. It's so smart. It's so intelligent. You know all the stuff. And then you look at your life and goes, well, it's still, my life is still the same. And I said, well, here's the problem. You educated the conscious mind with reading the book, going to the lecture, watching the video, or even just going, aha, that's creative learning. But subconscious mind does not learn from that. The subconscious mind learns from 2 fundamental ways. Hypnosis, first 7 years of your life, right? And after you were 7, how'd you learn something then? Repetition. How'd you learn the times table? You repeated it and you repeated it. How'd you learn how to drive? You practiced and you practiced. And why are all these important? Because those repetitions create the habits. So if you want to educate the subconscious mind, don't talk to it because there's nobody in there. And it's so frustrating. I would find myself with a donut in my hand, and Margaret refers to my favorite thing as circles of death. And I sit there with this donut, circle of death, thinking, why are you eating this? Why are you eating this? And I get mad at myself. You idiot, you're eating the circle of death? What are you doing? Didn't I tell you not to do that? It's like, okay, I reprimanded myself, and then about 20 minutes later, ooh, Krispy Kreme, I love those babies. And I go, you idiot, don't do that. Who am I talking to? That's the problem. Who am I saying don't do that to? Oh, I'm telling the subconscious. Oh, great, great. You know how effective that is? Get a tape player, old-fashioned technology, push the play button, the tape player is going, the program is on, and then I say, go up and talk to the tape player. Hey, change the tape, man. I don't like that. Play something different. I'm going to get very mad now. And the fact is this, I don't care how much you talk to the tape player, it's not going to change the program. The issue is this, there's nobody in the subconscious. So there's two fundamental ways: hypnosis, subliminal tapes, going to bed at night. Why? Because as you go to bed at night, the vibrations of your brain start to go at a slower level from the beta during the day, calm down to alpha, calm consciousness before you go to bed. And as you start to go to bed, guess what? It drops into the next vibrational frequency down called theta before you hit delta, sleep. That means every night as you go to bed, there's a window of hypnosis. And if you put the tapes on as you're going to bed, then you don't even have to hear it. It will unconsciously be downloaded into that subconscious program. So subliminal tapes are great. It's one of the first things I ever did. Then I say, well, what else is there? And I say, habit. And habit is not a sticky note. Let me tell you about a sticky note. A sticky note is a wish. Put it on the refrigerator and every now and then, don't eat donut. Yeah, right. That doesn't do it. That's not a habit. A habit is repetition. You have to repeat things. That's what habits are. So you make a practice of repeating a new behavior, and you practice it and you repeat it and you repeat it, and then one day you realize you're doing it without even thinking about it. And the fun part is, once a program goes into the subconscious, you never have to deal with it again. It's in there. It's going to stay in there until you rewrite it again. You can change it anytime you want, but it never changes. So if you put in the program you want, it will stay there without you doing any more work than having put it in the first place. And now on top of it, there's a new kind of programming process, and it's called energy psychology and belief change modifications. And these are new programs that nature gave us for a very important reason, because nature is the mother of invention. We need to change fast. We need the world to change quickly because we're heading full speed ahead toward an extinction process. We have to change our behaviors. We have to bring more love into this world and stop the separation, because we're all divine individuals sharing a love planet, which is heaven. If you create heaven when you fall in love, and the guy and the woman next to you, or the guy and the guy next to you, or whoever they are making their love and creating their heaven, and there's heaven all over the place, then guess what? The earth is heaven. That's our destination. In the back of my book, I have a whole list of resources, even on my website, brucelipton.com. There are resources of belief change modifications. There's a whole lot of different ones. I'm not telling you which one to do because it's an individual feeling. You pick out one you like, one that feels good to you, the vibes, whatever it is. Try it, because these new belief modifications, you can change beliefs in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes. A belief that's influenced your whole life, in 5 or 10 minutes you can rewrite that belief. And what is the result of rewriting the beliefs in the subconscious? The answer is love becomes an everyday way of life. Heaven on earth becomes an everyday way of life. My partner Margaret and I, creating a romantic way of life, an adventure that we've been on 17 years and 187 days so far. We wake up in love. We go to sleep in love. Our lives are in love. We're obsessed with each other. We're not aggressive, but we surely are addicted. And all of this is available to you. So the whole issue is this. You're looking for a life. You're being driven to find love. It's unconscious. You're being driven to find it because nature wants you to find it. Nature wants to reward you for finding it. Nature wants you to experience the most beautiful thing in the world, because if you do that, the child you raise will be the next level of evolution in the next generation. And this is what we're trying to do, is get out of the rut we've been in, disempowering ourselves, disempowering our children, and move into the future. Because you've touched this love. You've touched it even if it was only a few days. I just want you to know, when you touched that love, it wasn't an accident and it wasn't a coincidence. You created that. Now, understanding the nature of the subconscious program, will then say, oh my God, I see how I uncreated that. And the resolution is purely simple. The resolution is that you are endowed with the ability to live heaven on earth every day of your very long lives. And you will live longer because love nourishes you and the community you live in. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you for staying. I so appreciate it. Find heaven.